Hi, welcome to the Edge Podcast, a podcast from the Bluntness, where we unpack real-world experiences and expertise of seasoned and successful cannabis professionals. I'm your host, Harrison Wise, the founder and publisher of the Bluntness, and today's guest needs no introductions. Lulu Tsui, the co-founder and chief experience officer at On The Revel, a company centered around education, networking, and community building for the cannabis sector. Hi, Lulu. Welcome to the Edge.
Hey, Harrison. Really excited to be here. I remember we first connected out in LA like around 2018, 2019. And we were queuing up some things we wanted to do together, and then COVID happened. So it's really nice to connect again after the pandemic.
Indeed. Likewise. Good to see you, and congrats on all your success. We were at your recent event in Brooklyn, and it was just tremendous, phenomenal. So congratulations, kudos to you and your team on pulling that off.
Thank you. Yeah, that was our largest event yet. I think we hit about 1,000 people come through. So we're really, really excited just to see the energy that's coming from New York right now. I know in a lot of other markets, it's kind of like a little bit of a depressed state. So I always say if you want to recharge and getting excited about cannabis, come through to New York. We're at the infancy of our market here, and we're really excited to be connecting all the people right now.
Yeah, and you do a good job of that. What I want to kind of call out is that I think you guys, I know you guys do an outstanding job of really bringing all the different cross sections of cannabis together, whether it's cultivation to the suits to the streets to everything in between. And I think that's really unique to you guys. Most conferences kind of either have one or the other, and you're just really again really adept at bringing these seemingly different layers of the cannabis community together.
Yeah, I think I'm really proud of that. Thank you for noticing that. I think it just speaks to our team and also New York, right? Like That's what I love about New York is it's very multidimensional. Right. So I grew up on the West Coast, so I don't want to say it's mono, but it's you kind of hang out with the circle that you hang out with. But what's beautiful about New York is you can hang out with different groups, and anything that you're looking for, anything that you're interested in, you'll find a group to be with. And I think that's what I love about New York is the fact that you can have different types of friends. You can have, you can be in different rooms, and we very much believe that there's good people in all rooms. And what we're trying to create is this room, the safe space where people from all those other great rooms can come together and really connect and explore and build together.
Yep. Well, mission accomplished there. Like I said, it was a great event. But it's interesting. You mentioned the fact that you are from the West Coast, and I know one of the sort of mantras or kind of values of On The Revel is New York cannabis for New Yorkers by New Yorkers. So I assume you've adopted New York as your sort of new home through and through.
I mean, I've been in New York since 2006, so that's 16 years in and out. I first started out here. I'm a UX designer and researcher, so started coming out here when there's a lot more tech activity, because New York's always been really great about advertising and marketing, but tech, it was still, learning. So I really got a taste of what New York business was like just coming out here. Most of my clients were in fintech and non-for-profit. So I just really resonated with the differences that were here. I love the West Coast. I'm from Oregon. I went to school in Washington State, did 10 years in tech in San Francisco and 5 years in Los Angeles. But, I love the lifestyle that the West Coast has. But in terms of connecting with people, in terms of just getting shit done, this is something that, I've been around the world. This is something that you can only find in New York. So Jacoby and I we started doing this in 2016. So for the past 7 years, we put all of our efforts behind New York and building New York, because we really believe that once New York came online, it would definitely be a global influencer in terms of how cannabis industries or markets are made.
Yeah. So let's dive into that a little bit, since you kind of talk about that arc, right, of sort of pre-legalization and where we're at now. How do you think it's going?
I think that I'm very proud to be in a market that is leading with equity first. There's versus other markets that have kind of thought about equity as a second thought or something that came later because there was pressure. So, and of course with that it's challenging. It's so for folks that don't know, New York, we have conditional licenses for cultivators and processors that started last year. And then the first now announced 300 retail stores in New York, the dispensaries, are going towards folks that have either had an arrest or a conviction with marijuana. So I think that's pissed off a lot of folks. I think the people that it's pissed off are probably, this is the first time they've had to wait for anything that they wanted to do. So it's been interesting to see the effects that is caused. But I think it also is very telling because you're seeing, people have been kind of talking about equity and yada yada, and seeing what they're actually thinking. It's been a real eye opener. So it's going as well as it can be, I suppose. I mean, I do feel for the farmers, the cultivators. They're sitting on a lot of product because there's no stores to sell. To right now, I think we're on our 5th store right now, or 6th that's opening up. So it's been slow, but I'm hopeful that what we see today is not going to be what we see in a year, or even 2 years or 3 years. So while every market has always had its hiccups, I'm hopeful that the intent of what New York is trying to do will come to fruition.
Totally. Yeah, I think people need to understand that, legalization is evolution, not an event, right? It's not something that just, goes on and now there's 35 stores that are open and let's rock and roll. It's going to take time. And likewise, you're not going to be able to satisfy all the constituents, right? There's upstate, downstate, there's the west of the Hudson, the east of the Hudson, and then there's different constituents within that. Like, for example, we did have a chance to catch up with Steph V, and sticking on the social equity topic, there are pockets of the community. I think social equity is also sort of mismanaged in that there are folks like him who have done serious time who deserve licenses or should be prioritized for licenses, versus those who may, what he claimed, are weekend warriors, right? People who have been arrested, right? And certainly, that there's merit to that as well, that people who have been incarcerated for either caught smoking weed or maybe selling, very lightweight, compared to someone like him who has done, more time at the state and or federal level. So it's interesting to kind of try to balance those different, theories of what social equity is.
Yeah, and I think it'd be great to see, a lot of the folks that have put their sweat, tears, decades into this, grandfathered in a specific way.
Right.
But it also means, that's a decision that every operator has to make a decision for, which is, okay, if I do this, I have to be in this regulated market with not being able to maneuver the same way that I normally do. Yep. So I think that's
and accountable now to not just yourself, but now a whole myriad of entities and organizations and what have you. Yeah.
So I've talked to folks that have crossed over into a regulated market, and for them, the driver was, I have a family now, I have kids. So part of that decision was around not looking over my shoulder the entire time, or having other responsibilities other than yourself or your crew. So I think that's a personal decision that everybody needs to make on their own. And what we're trying to do with On The Revel is provide information and access and good people to help you make that decision, because we're not trying to lead anybody into this crazy, chaotic. I think you and I are probably addicted to this type of energy. It's not made for everybody. Some people want to come in the beginning and they're kind of like, I'm not risk adverse. I thrive well in kind of chaos. I want to lead and do my own thing. Other folks are like, ooh, it might be a little bit too soon for me. I want to enter with my skill set and work for a company at a later date. So, we're not saying you need to do anything, but we're saying, like, here's the information. This is how you get started. These are really great people you should be working with. And boom, maybe some magic can happen from that when we create.
Totally. Yeah. Building the plane while you're flying it is not for everyone.
No, it is not.
And it short circuits some other people, so it's interesting that you point that out. So what would you say is probably or what would you think is the biggest misconception people have about the legal cannabis industry in New York right now?
I think, well, we held our first buyer's market, our buyer's club. So what that was, we kept on hearing from our friends at Dutchy that were saying, like, hey, we're working with these card operators. They have no access. So they don't really know how to connect with the processors, the cultivators, the brands.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm also on the retail committee for CANNY, which is the Cannabis Association in New York, and was hearing, like, wow, we've got these operators for the supply chain side that really don't know how to get in contact with any of the retail stores. So last minute I pressured Jacoby into this. He acquiesced, but we really wanted to fill this pothole. And in a lot of the press that we're hearing right now, right, that's been reported, it's like, oh, New York's fucking up. There's no market. There's no brands. Well, lo and behold, we had 60 plus brands connected to 48 of the 66 card operators. So I guess what I'm trying to say is there is a baby market happening. Mm-hmm. Don't always believe what the media reports, because you're getting the viewpoint from one person, two people that don't really, they're, in a micro world.
Right.
And the macro, if you zoom out, is like, it's happening. It's really, really happening. And I would also say to the media, like, stop throwing salt at our game right now. It's like, just be patient and just and report. And if you report, like, talk to multiple people. Like, I'm a UX designer. You can always, tune the narrative towards what you want it to say. But, like, if you're going to be a responsible journalist, if you're going to be a responsible media platform, at least get various opinions and tell the story.
Right. The full picture. Sure.
And I'm going to throw protect your sources. This is also not about you, the person, the journalist. This is about, a collective consciousness that we're trying to do in New York. So, like, just be cool. That's all I'm asking is just be cool. So to your question, I'm sorry that was a little bit long-winded. It was really nice to see what was actually happening versus what's been reported.
Agreed. And staying on that theme, what would you think is the biggest misconception people have about the legacy cannabis industry in New York?
I think I really want to clarify that, like legacy to me is a different term than, say, like the gray market.
See, this is interesting. This has come up a couple of times in conversation, also with Steph V and a couple of others.
Yeah.
Legacy. So please.
I'm going to say legacy are folks that maybe had to do this as an opportunity, right? There's limited opportunity culturally, socioeconomically, X, Y, and Z. This is a choice that they made. They've been doing it for many, many years, many, many decades. They've been doing it quietly, kind of quietly in the background. Everybody has their guy in New York.
Yep.
And then boom, about a year ago, all of these stores started popping up. And I'm going to call those folks gray market.
Gray market, right.
And I would call them opportunists,
sure.
And what's really shitty is that they are also now taking market share from the legacy folks. And unfortunately, because of the boldness of how they're operating, like selling to kids, just being out, being very loud, not being respectful of the communities, especially the Black and brown communities, it's causing a big issue, on the health level, on the just so many levels.
Sure.
And unfortunately, legacy folks are going to be grouped into that as well because it's all unregulated.
Yeah.
So that's my biggest.
It's interesting, like I said, that there is now this sort of bifurcation of that term. It's important to have that bifurcation too. That to your point, what legacy really is versus the gray market, and they are two very distinct things.
Yeah, I mean, I was at Hall of Flowers. I was at Hall of Flowers, and some guy was like, "Yeah, I just opened up my first dispensary," and I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's up in Dykeman." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Well, yeah, I have my first dispensary." I'm
Right.
like, "You're from California?" And he's like, "Yeah, I paid 180,000, and they opened up a dispensary for me." So it's it's very interesting to see, I guess, the gray market and how kind of bold it
Right.
is. I'm still from that world where it's like you just keep quiet about
Yeah.
everything, and
Right.
you just kind of do your own thing, but you do it quietly.
Yeah.
And now it's like very, very loud.
Well, it started. I think it started with the trucks. Definitely, like not the weed world guys. I don't know about those. Those guys are not the example, but
And they're not selling weed. Have
and
you
they're
ever
not
seen
selling weed, right? Exactly.
those
Exactly.
lollipops have nothing in them at
Exactly.
all. At
Exactly.
all. I'm like, ugh, yeah.
But the tourists latch on to that. It's lucrative from that perspective. But the Chinese takeout one, the Uncle Bud's. There was probably a half a dozen others that they're out there. They're on the corners. So that kind of started it. Where I guess those enterprising entrepreneurs were like, oh, I might as well jump on board if it's this easy.
Yeah, I mean, New York is it's
Opportunistic. It's just what it
opportunity,
is. Absolutely.
entrepreneurs and money.
If
So
there's
like
money
that,
to be made, we're gonna make that
yes.
money. That's
And we're gonna do it until we have to apologize. So
exactly.
I mean, that's a very New York, or
Yeah.
New York City attitude. So I'm not saying like, hey, like don't do that. That's shitty. But I'm just saying like that is causing
Yeah.
some issues, and it's taking away from our legacy market as well. So
Agreed. Agreed. So would you say that that's one of the biggest challenges facing New York's cannabis industry today?
I think some I think that like how do you incorporate legacy into the regulated market if they want to join? Personally, like I'm thinking about potentially going for maybe a license. And how do you, with the existing folks, right? How do you navigate around that and be respectful of legacy and
Mm,
market share and all of those things? So there's that as an entrepreneur side. There's how do you deal with all of the existing shops? They say there's like what 1,200 right now. Like
roughly. Yep.
so I think there's a lot of potential things that are going to be issues, but I'm hoping um, it's going to be a mess. We know it's going to be a mess. It's like it's going to be a mess. How I can't even sugarcoat it, right? It's going to be a mess. So we'll see what happens.
Time will tell, right? Time will
Time
tell.
will tell. Yeah.
Um, so projecting forward a couple of years, from your point of view, what does a successful New York cannabis industry look like? So kind of taking that it's going to be a mess, but after we get through the messy part, what does that sort of utopian legal cannabis industry in New York look like?
Oh yeah, my perfect cannabis world would be that operators in their neighborhoods are reflective of what that neighborhood looks like.
Hmm.
Um, I hope that there is lots of different brands for consumers to choose from. I hope that consumers are well educated, that there's really great PSAs, that there's really great campaigns to teach consumers what that really looks like. And I hope that honestly, I hope that revenue and profit is owned by New Yorkers in the neighborhoods that look like them, So I think just having opportunity and having access to enter, whoever you are, whatever background you come from, I think that's just important. Like the way I think about, I guess, equity is like if you're running a race, right? Like I was like 5 foot tall by the time I was 8 years old. So I remember like running track and just like killing everybody. It just never felt right because I knew I had an advantage. I knew I was just larger and quicker just because of my size, and it just never felt right. So I believe that with equity, what we're talking about is giving everybody an opportunity to race from the same
Starting point.
background,
Yeah.
starting
Yeah.
point. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I just feel like if we can create a market in New York that kind of leads by that example or sets an example, that maybe it will be effective. And as other markets come online, maybe it will be effective as a global, goal. So that's my cannabis utopia. And, oh, and that market share is great, and that no one's trying to bottom out the prices, because I know that's already starting to happen. Like, please don't do that. Like, if you want to do that, do it later when we have a healthier market. Like, don't set us up for failure and, you know, do your 200-pound weed right now. Like, doesn't work. And it's such a short-sighted goal.
So do you think there is room for mom and pop businesses in New York cannabis?
I think that's what the OCM is actually trying to create. Because if you are in New York, you know, if you're actually, I'd say New York City, you don't really see these chains. You know, you do here and there, but if you're in your neighborhood, like I'm in Brooklyn and Prospect Heights, our chains are maybe banks. But, you know, my grocery store, my bodega, my like liquor store, it's all mom and pops.
Yep.
So I think that New York is trying to create a market that already replicates what it already is in terms of commerce. So I do think that there's room for mom and pop, and I think that's why we have the two the non-vertical system here, is to allow for, you know, small and medium-sized businesses to start and thrive.
And do you see a difference between the upstate New York cannabis and New York City? We're a microcosm unto ourselves in the city, in the 5 boroughs. How does that translate or sort of contrast with what's happening in Rochester, Buffalo, you know, all the other areas?
I'm one of those folks that have been just in New York City, so I'm starting to explore. I'm starting to explore up there. I mean, we have really great friends, you know, Forest Farms and Flower House, that are, you know, leading the charge. So I don't really know the retail or the kind of way that's happening out there versus New York. You know, I think New York has always been more about distribution, you know, rather than cultivation.
Right.
But I did spend a year with a cultivator processor in Washington State. So I definitely think there's different goals and different motivations in terms of what part of the supply chain that you're on. So yeah, I can speak about New York City, but I can't really speak too much about what's happening upstate.
It's all good. All good.
Well, you know, they call us downstate.
Sorry? Yeah, no, we're downstate. Yeah, no, I'm aware. Yeah, I'm aware. I know, it's weird. We would never use that to describe ourselves, but yeah. But I totally agree with that. Like the small mom and pop stuff, like homegrown, local. So it irks me, and as I'm sure it does many others, that this lawsuit from this Michigan applicant is holding up all this stuff. It's like, yo, like,
bro,
you're not even from here. Like, get out of the way. Move, bitch. Get out the way. Get out, you know, like, how does that stick such a wrench into everything that we're trying to accomplish here? I can't even believe that that's allowed. Like,
what I said, it was, you know, like, oh, it's, you know, the privileged folks, this is the first time that they've had to wait. So what are they going to do? Hide behind the lawyers. That's what they always do.
But you're literally a Michigan applicant. Like you're out. Like they shouldn't even be up for discussion. Like,
no, you could, if you were a Michigan resident who got arrested in New York, you can totally apply.
So is that the catch in this case? I'm not as deep into the case.
Yeah, there's no limitation in terms of residency of where you lived or anything like that. It's basically like if you were arrested in New York, because New York had the worst stop and frisk and Rockefeller laws. New York, you know, is the most convictions for cannabis things. So I'm just like, bro, really? Like, and it's really interesting. If you try to find the lawyer, you can't find any information about them. So it's shady. I'm like, come on, bro. Like,
yeah, or at least be part of the second wave. Like, don't hold up the first wave of people who have been waiting patiently, have money put in, and, you know, like they just need a clear path forward. Now they're in this like weird holding pattern that.
And just stop hiding. Like, if you feel a certain way, fucking just reveal yourself and just own it. But it's like the shady behind hiding, like pussy bullshit. Then I'm just like, really?
Well, I'd be scared of New Yorkers too, though.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing, and that's the thing. Like, that I really can't stand about the regulated market is if you're a bad actor, there's no consequences, right? Like you just hide behind your lawyers and you just throw money at it. And I'm tired of being in markets where the only people that actually make money are lawyers because everyone's hiding behind them. And at least in the legacy worlds, like if you did something fucked up, there would be consequences and there was a code.
Yeah.
And I feel like
It's self-regulating in its own way. Absolutely. 100%.
so like I challenge the lawyer and the group to at least come out and say
Right.
something. Like really, it's just it's so juvenile and it's so just like it's not honorable at all.
Agreed.
You're not honoring the plant or anything about this whole industry. So like suck it.
um, so I know we're coming up short on time, so I don't want to miss any important things that you have coming up. And I know you are president of the Cannabis Media Council. Tell us a little bit about your work there and anything you have going on with regards to the mission of Cannabis Media Council.
So I'm really excited about that project. I'm Joyce Sonali from Sonoma Hills Farm at Mamie Dennison from Pheno. They started it and they asked me to join about a year ago. So our whole mission is to start positive messaging to normalize and destigmatize plants in mainstream media. So using like, if you go to imhighlightnow.com, it's our first campaign and I love this campaign. It's very cheeky, it's playful, it's I think very different than a lot of the messaging that's been happening around, which has been very like heavy and very intense and needed. But I also feel like we've been kind of stuck in this world for the past probably 10, 15 years. And if we're trying to hit mainstream, like what we own, like 12%, maybe 18% of folks that are like over in the cannabis side, if we want to get the other, we have to start conversations that are engaging, that are lighthearted, that's not like so heavy. So that is the purpose of the Cannabis Media Council. We are really trying to create some PSAs on a national level that's not just related to one brand or one part of the industry. It's to uplift the entire industry. So if folks are interested in participating and being a founding member, like please go to cannabismediacouncil.com. We are taking donations to expand our campaign. So we launched our first test with Hearst Media. There's another interesting one that's coming out in May, so keep your eyes out. Pretty major publication, and talking to different groups about how we can start using our assets and our campaigns to just hit different markets. So we'd love to partake and talk to you, whoever is interested. So cannabismediacouncil.com, and if you want to check out the campaign, our first one, it's imhighlightnow.com.
Awesome. I love that idea. I remember when our agency was working with MedMen and they came out with the I'm a Stoner campaign.
Yeah.
Again, very brand specific. I get that, but I think it did try to accomplish what a lot of, what you're trying to do at Cannabis Media Council for the broader industry. And that was, I think, a very pivotal moment as well for the industry, but certainly for MedMen to have that type of campaign on billboards where, an old lady or a nurse or a firefighter, just people you see every day, stoners, right? Like that exactly. Seemingly derogatory term are the people, these are the people in your neighborhood, to take a page from Sesame Street. But that's what makes it accessible. So I do believe in the mission of what you guys are doing at the Media Council.
Thank you. And I'm happy to say that David Dancer, the CMO that launched that campaign, is actually an advisor
for
CNC. Yeah. So awesome. He's really excited too. I think we're on this precipice, right, of really trying to, I think it's tipping point is past. Everyone is aware of cannabis, and now it's starting to just change the narrative. And I think people are open to it.
I agree. Well, I look forward to seeing what's coming. You said May is the next campaign.
Oh no, our I'm High Right Now campaign is we're slowly building it out because from coming from a user experience background, it's like I'm more methodical about like, let's do it smaller, learn from it, and keep iterating and doing it
Sure.
bigger. So we have a pretty big ad that's coming out for this campaign in May.
In May. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and we have 2 more lined up. So the next one is gonna be, something akin to "So we got it wrong, let's get it right."
Awesome.
And then another one about intergenerational communication and education. So it's all gonna be fun and cheeky, and really excited to launch that into the world.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, keep us apprised. We'll cover it at the Bluntness, and definitely help spread the word and support the mission. On the Revel, let's get back to sort of your primary focus. Last year, you had a pretty epic block party in Brooklyn, which unfortunately I couldn't attend. It coincided with my end of summer vacation, but I heard it was just the bomb. And you have plans for another one, a
We
follow up
do.
to that?
We do. It's going to be in August also. We're finalizing the dates. I think it's either going to be the 12th or the 26th. We're going to do it again. And that was really fun. We're also going to add a job fair to that as well. So hopefully by August there will be more stores and more organizations and more operators opening up, so we can actually have a pretty fun job fair just to help folks who are interested in joining the industry, to kind of figure out what they need to do, what it's like,
Hmm.
how to apply, type of skill sets they would need, and pretty stoked about that.
Nice. Brooklyn again, or are you Harlem on the radar? Like, what are
I
some
think
other?
we're TBD. I think we might do it Brooklyn again. We definitely want to bring it to Harlem. We definitely want to do some other events upstate as well.
Mhm.
So I think most people just need to know that everyone on our team actually has full-time jobs. So we are growing as much as we can based on our capacity. If we were full-time in this, I think we could, do a lot more events. But as it stands, this is our passion project, and we've
Mhm.
we've grown it uh, as we're comfortable growing it, because again, we do have full-time jobs as well. So
Well, I think that commitment and passion shows. I think it comes through loud and clear in the events that you do produce. Both the block party and the revelry events. So keep up the good work, and I appreciate that you host them in Brooklyn. I'm born and raised in Coney Island, and Brooklyn is
oh, nice,
is in my blood through and through. I live in Westchester now, so I certainly bring a lot of that Brooklyn energy here, and often
nice.
it's misconstrued. Um, I don't always get to bring my authentic self to work because some people take it the wrong way, but I keep it real. It's in the name of our site, the Bluntness.
Yes.
So I do appreciate that you keep it real and you keep it authentic to Brooklyn and New
Yeah,
York in general. So I
we
appreciate
brought it.
that.
We did an event last year in Yonkers, which was really interesting because Westchester is like one of the wealthiest, counties in the United States. But we also learned it has some of the largest numbers of legacy operators as
Yep.
well.
Yep.
So we wanted to create an event where the groups could meet and see what comes out of that. So
I dig it. That's awesome. Any parting thoughts, Lulu, before we wrap up?
I always tell people don't be a dick, because the industry might seem big, but it is very small. So just bring good vibes and be honest. Like, that's all I ask. Like, please don't lie to us. Like, that's New Yorkers can smell it from a mile away, and it's not cute when you come at them that way.
I agree. Actually, as one of your speakers said, I think Christina Bucola.
Hmm.
You got. There's several questions you got to ask
Yes.
before you quote unquote fuck with somebody or
Yeah.
somebody
Exactly.
fucks with you.
Exactly.
So I appreciate that. It kind of goes back to my point about being a New Yorker, and I've worked all over the world too, and I've had to sort of temper my personality, which is very much a byproduct of where I'm from. But to
Well,
see
Harrison,
that. To,
you don't have to do it no more.
no, I
We're
know.
letting you.
It felt so. I'm being honest now. Like I felt it was so refreshing to sort of I'll be amongst my people. Like it was like the first moment where I'm like, oh shit, I'm finally with my tribe. And she's going to be on the podcast. I reached out to Christina like
She's the
immediately
best.
afterwards, and I
Christina
said
is
I have to
the
have
best.
you on. And I
Yes.
was like, I love that. Like she did a whole presentation with like, fuck with me, fuck with you. These are the questions you got. Like, I was like, I love it. These are my people. I'm home. So I really appreciated that. And so I'll thank you from the bottom of my heart for making that reality.
Yeah.
It's great. So I do love it. And absolutely don't be a dick, but keep it real, you know,
And West Coast folks, don't be so sensitive, because if you're wanting to thrive here, you're going to get offended. You're going to like, it's not the same. So just like if you go to a friend's home, right? Like, just respect the rules of the house and don't expect how you are in your world that it's going to be the same in this new world. Just sit back, be humble, listen and learn, and you can be successful.
Well, awesome. Well, I think, you know, we really appreciate your insights, Lulu. It was great to catch up with you today. Thank you for everything that you're doing across the On The Revel community and the Cannabis Media Council. Thanks again for joining us today.
It's always a pleasure, Harrison.
Thanks, Lulu. Talk to you soon.